Hey, imagine you're standing on a windy cliff at sunrise, trying to capture those fleeting colors while your hand shakes a little from the cold. You pull out a DSLR, half expecting the shot to be a mess, but then the camera actually locks onto the subject, the noise stays low, and you get a crisp image you can actually use. I've kind of been there, and I know how frustrating it can be when you spend a lot of money on a tool and it just doesn't deliver when you need it most. So before you decide whether to drop a serious chunk of cash on a flagship DSLR, let's walk through what matters in real-world use: risk of buying the wrong thing, value for money, and who actually benefits from the features. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Nikon D5 is not a beginner's camera. It's a professional-grade, full-frame DSLR built for demanding environments, sports, wildlife, documentary, you name it. If you're just getting started with photography, you'll likely be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of controls and the cost of pairing it with fast lenses. That said, if you already own a couple of Nikon fount lenses and you need a body that can keep up with fast action and very low light, this camera could be a game-changer. Let's talk about autofocus, because that's where a lot of purchases go wrong. The D5's multicam 20K sensor has 153 focus points, and on paper that sounds insane. In practice, I tested it on a local track day shooting sprint cars at 80 miles per hour with the sun low on the horizon. The AF system stayed locked on the moving car, even when the lighting dropped from bright daylight to a shady patch in a split second. The key thing is that the AF points are not just spread across the frame, they're grouped in dense clusters that let the camera track subjects that disappear and reappear. For a wedding photographer who often has to chase the bride across a crowded hall, that confidence can mean the difference between a usable frame and a missed moment. Low-light performance is another hot topic. The D5's native ISO 102,400, extendable up to 3,280,000, sounds like hype, but the image sensor together with the Xpeed 5 processor actually manages noise quite well. I shot a series of indoor portraits at ISO 6,400 with a single 85mm f1.8 lens. The resulting JPGs had enough detail to pull prints up to 30 inches without looking like a grainy mess. In contrast, many newer mirrorless bodies will start to get mushy at that ISO. If you're often working in dim venues, think concerts, low-key portraits, or nocturnal wildlife, the D5's high ISO handling is a solid reason to consider it. Now, you might wonder about video because many creators are leaning toward mirrorless for 4K. The D5 does record 4K UHD at 30 frames per second, and the footage is clean, but it lacks some of the video-centric features you see on hybrid cameras, like advanced log profiles or high frame rate slow motion. If your main output is still stills and you only need occasional 4K clips for behind-the-scenes content, it works fine. If you're planning to produce a lot of cinematic video, you'll probably find the workflow a bit clunky compared to a dedicated video mirrorless. Battery life is often overlooked until you're on location. The D5 holds a large ENEL 18A battery, and in my field tests it gave me roughly 1,200 shots before needing a recharge, far more than most mirrorless options. For a photojournalist who spends an entire day covering an event, that endurance translates to fewer battery swaps and less downtime. The camera also has a dual-slot configuration, CF in this version, which means you can write RAW to one card and JPEG to another, or set both slots for backup. The downside: CF cards are pricey and not as ubiquitous as SD cards, so you'll need to plan for that extra cost. The menu system on Nikon DSLRs has a reputation for being dense, and the D5 is no exception. It's chock full of options that can be overwhelming if you don't already know where to look. However, once you get a handle on the custom settings menu, you can fine-tune things like AF tracking sensitivity, exposure compensation, and even assign frequently used functions to the dials. If you enjoy digging into menus and customizing your workflow, you'll appreciate the depth. If you prefer a more streamlined, point-and-shoot interface, the learning curve could feel like a hurdle. So, who should buy the D5? Professional shooters who need rock-solid autofocus, superb high ISO performance, and long battery life. Think sports photographers, wildlife specialists, and seasoned photojournalists. Also, studios that already have a collection of Nikon lenses and want to future-proof their gear with a body that can handle the most demanding lighting scenarios. The D5 shines when the stakes are high and you can't afford a missed shot. Who should skip it? Hobbyists who are still learning the basics, anyone on a tight budget, and creators whose primary focus is video production. The price point for the body alone is steep.